Hello, and welcome. I'm Aiden, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this time together to step away from the rush of the day and ease into a world of dreams and wonder. Tonight, I'll tell you a story. The Quiet Snowfall. It is the gentle tale of a little girl named Sophie, who discovers that even in a world full of noise and hurry, the soft hush of falling snow can remind us of the beauty hidden in stillness and the warmth found in love. But before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? And what time is it as you settle in to hear this story? We'd also love to know what kinds of stories you'd enjoy next. Your thoughts and suggestions inspire us, so please share them in the comments below. If you'd like even more from us, you can check out our Patreon, where you'll gain early access to all our stories, as well as a curated Spotify playlist to help you rest. And if these bedtime stories have been a gentle pause in your nights, subscribing is the simplest way to support us. It means the world to us, and it helps us keep this space soft and sacred for dreamers like you. Now, take a slow, deep breath. Let your body relax into the comfort of where you are, and allow the quiet around you to settle in. Imagine the hush of snowflakes drifting softly through the air, each one carrying you closer to rest. As the world outside grows still, let us step gently into the story together. The morning began like any other in Sophie's small village. The cobblestone streets echoed with hurried footsteps. Carts rattled past, carrying bundles of firewood, and the blacksmith's hammer rang in steady rhythm. Yet Sophie's eyes weren't on the bustle of the day. She stood quietly at the edge of her family's porch, her breath curling into the cool air, waiting for something she couldn't quite name. It happened all at once, a single snowflake drifting down from the grey sky above. It spun slowly in the air, catching the weak morning light, and landed softly on Sophie's mitten. She gasped, holding her hand perfectly still, afraid the slightest movement would make it vanish. The flake melted quickly against the warmth of her wool glove, leaving behind only the memory of its brief perfection. Her heart fluttered with a kind of wonder she couldn't explain. Around her, the village carried on, but Sophie hardly noticed the clamour anymore. She tilted her face upward and saw more flakes beginning to fall, each one as delicate as the first, tumbling gently from the sky. The world, though still busy and loud, felt a little different to her now, quieter somehow, as if the snow was weaving a hush over the noise. She thought of how strange and magical it was that something so small could change how the world felt. Sophie smiled to herself and whispered, almost as if speaking to the snow itself, "Hello." For the first time that day, she wasn't thinking about errands, chores, or the crowded market square. Instead, She was simply watching, simply being, content to stand still in the cold morning air, waiting for more snowflakes to arrive. And as she stood there, the quiet wonder of winter began to settle gently in her heart. The snow did not stop with just a few flakes. Soon, it began to fall in steady, graceful streams, drifting from the clouds above as if the whole sky had opened its hands and released a shower of soft white feathers. Sophie stood in awe, watching as the rooftops of the village turned from dark brown to pale ivory, as though every house had been dressed in a winter cloak. The cobblestones beneath her boots began to blur under the fresh layer. The sharp edges of the stones softened into a smooth, glowing sheet. The tall oak tree at the end of the lane bent under the gentle weight of the snow, each branch outlined in white, like lace spun by nature's own hand. Even the noisy marketplace seemed to grow quieter, the sounds of merchants calling and wheels turning muffled by the thickening blanket above and below. Sophie stretched out her mittened hands and spun slowly in place, letting the flakes touch her cheeks, her nose, her hair. They melted almost instantly, leaving tiny, cool kisses against her skin. She felt as though she were inside a dream where everything had slowed down, wrapped in calm. Around her, children squealed with delight, rushing to catch snowflakes on their tongues. Adults, though still busy, moved with more care, their footsteps measured so as not to slip. Yet Sophie noticed something they did not. The snow was not just falling, it was transforming. It was changing the world into something quieter, gentler, and softer. She closed her eyes and listened. Instead of the clatter and chatter that usually filled the village, she heard the sound of silence, snow falling on rooftops, on leaves, on the earth itself. A sound so delicate, it felt more like a feeling than a noise. As she opened her eyes again, Sophie whispered to herself, "It's like the world is being tucked in." And in that moment, wrapped in the calm of the snowfall, she felt tucked in too, safe, still, and quietly happy. As the snow thickened, the village grew restless. Sophie could see it in the way people hurried down the streets, heads bent low against the cold, boots crunching quickly through the gathering white. Merchants rushed to pull their goods indoors, brushing snow from crates of apples and sacks of grain. Horses whinnied and stamped nervously, their breath rising in white clouds as they tugged against their reins. The air was filled with voices, sharp, hurried calls of neighbors warning one another of the storm's strength, children being gathered by their parents, and the clatter of shutters being pulled closed against the chill. It was as though the entire village wanted to finish its busy work before the snowfall deepened. But Sophie didn't feel that same urgency. She stood in the middle of it all, still and quiet, watching. Where others saw trouble, she saw beauty. She watched snowflakes land gently on the shoulders of passers-by, dusting them like stars, and noticed how the roofs now glowed pale silver under the dim light of the afternoon. The noisy rush seemed far away, like a song playing in the distance, softened by the falling snow. She thought of how quickly the grown-ups moved, always chasing the next task, never pausing to notice the way the snow danced as it fell. Sophie tilted her head back and opened her mouth, laughing softly when a snowflake landed on her tongue, cold and sweet. For a moment, the noise of the restless village faded behind her. She let herself step aside from the bustling square, walking slowly down a quieter lane where the snow piled thick and the world felt calm once more. Sophie didn't want to rush. She wanted to savor this gift of winter that seemed meant for those who slowed down enough to notice it. Sophie's boots crunched softly as she made her way out of the square, following the narrow path that wound toward the edge of the village. Here, the houses grew fewer, and the sounds of clattering doors and hurried footsteps faded until there was only the hush of the snowfall. She knew exactly where she was going, her secret place, the little bench beneath the great oak tree. The oak stood tall and proud, its branches stretched wide like arms embracing the sky. In summer, its leaves made a canopy of shade, and in autumn, its branches flamed gold and amber. But in winter, when snow rested gently along its limbs, the tree looked almost magical, like something from a fairy tale. Beneath its wide trunk sat the old wooden bench, worn smooth from years of use. But to Sophie, it was perfect. She brushed the fresh snow from its seat with her mitten and sat down, tucking her scarf close around her neck. From here, she could see the rooftops of the village peeking through the snowfall, their chimneys puffing with smoke. But the distance softened everything. The busy world felt far away, like an echo that could no longer reach her. Sophie sat very still, listening to the soft hush of the flakes as they fell through the branches above her. It was a sound unlike any other, gentle, secretive, almost like whispers meant only for her. She imagined the snowflakes carrying messages, each one a quiet reminder that the world could be soft and kind when it wished to be. She closed her eyes and let herself sink into the stillness. No rush, no noise, no hurried steps, only her breath, the falling snow, and the steady presence of the oak tree. This was her place of peace, where she could listen to her own thoughts and feel as though the world itself was resting. In that quiet moment, Sophie felt something deep inside her, something calm and warm, as though the snow wasn't just covering the earth, but also wrapping around her heart. It was here, in her secret spot, that she felt the true magic of winter. Not in the bustle, not in the rush, but in the silence that asked nothing of her except to simply be. The longer Sophie sat beneath the oak tree, the more the snow gathered around her. It clung to the edges of her boots, built little white caps along the bench, and dusted her red scarf until it looked like it had been sprinkled with stars. She didn't mind the cold. Her mittens were thick, and her coat was snug. But she noticed the snow was falling faster now, the flakes larger and heavier, drifting in slow spirals before landing with a soft hush. From far away, she heard her mother's voice carrying faintly through the muffled air. "Sophie, Sophie, come home soon." The sound was softened by the snowfall, but it reached her heart clearly enough. She knew her mother was right. The storm was deepening, and it would soon be harder to see through the curtain of white. Sophie hesitated, her small hands resting in her lap. She didn't want to leave her quiet place. Out here, the world felt calm and safe, and she felt as though she could stay forever, watching snowflakes fall like tiny miracles from the sky. The village would be busy, filled with the sounds of closing shutters and the scrape of boots on stone. She preferred the silence, but another part of her felt a little tug of worry. What if she waited too long? What if her mother's voice faded into the snow, and she found herself alone in a world where everything looked the same, white stretching endlessly in every direction? She hugged her scarf closer, her breath misting into the frosty air. The thought made her chest tighten, though not with fear exactly, more with the pull between two things she loved: the quiet magic of her secret spot and the warmth of home waiting for her. Sophie looked up at the branches of the oak tree, now heavy with snow, and whispered softly, as if to the tree itself, "I'll come back tomorrow. Don't forget me." Then she stood, brushing snow from her coat, her little boots crunching against the untouched white as she began walking back toward the village. The hush of the snow followed her, wrapping around her like a gentle song. But beneath it, her mother's voice called again, closer now, steady and full of love. It was a reminder that sometimes peace wasn't only found in being alone with the snow, but also in being home where warmth and love waited. As Sophie followed the snowy path back toward the village, she noticed how quickly the world was changing. The air felt thicker, the flakes falling in such steady waves that the rooftops ahead seemed blurred, like shapes drawn in chalk and smudged by a hand. She walked slower, listening to the muffled crunch of her boots. Each step felt softer than the last, as though the earth itself were being padded with pillows. When she reached the village square, something felt different. The bustling sounds she expected, the hurried clatter of carts, the chatter of voices, the ring of the blacksmith's hammer, had all faded. The square was nearly silent, She paused, her mittened hand clutching her scarf as she looked around. People were still there. She could see them, but they were not moving as she remembered. A woman carrying a basket of bread walked so slowly, Sophie thought she might be frozen in place. A horse pulling a cart lifted its hoof in such a gradual motion that Sophie could trace the shape of its breath in the air before the hoof even touched the ground. Even the falling snow seemed to have slowed, each flake suspended longer in the air before finally drifting down. Her heart skipped, not with fear, but with wonder. It was as if the snowfall had taken hold of time itself, stretching each moment into something long and dreamlike. Sophie turned in a slow circle, her eyes wide, her breath quiet. "Hello," she called softly, though her voice seemed swallowed by the snow before it could carry far. No one turned. No one answered. The entire village was moving, but so gently, so silently, that Sophie felt as though she had stepped out of her world and into another. She took a step forward, her boots crunching clearly against the snow, and that sound, the sharpness of it, startled her. She realized then that she was moving at her own pace, untouched by the slowness that had wrapped itself around the village. Sophie's eyes lifted to the sky. The flakes drifted in lazy spirals, glowing faintly in the grey light, and for the first time, she wondered if the snowfall was more than just weather. It felt alive somehow, as though it carried a secret too delicate for most to see. She stood there in the silent square, her small hands clenched into fists inside her mittens, and whispered to herself, "Where did everyone go?" The world around her looked the same, yet entirely different. Familiar houses and familiar faces, but caught in a silence so deep it made her chest ache. Sophie realized she hadn't simply left her secret spot beneath the oak tree. Somehow, she had stepped into the snow's secret world. Sophie stood very still in the center of the square, her breath rising in slow white curls, the hush of the snow deeper than she had ever known. Around her, the villagers moved as though they were caught in a dream. Steps stretched long and voices no more than faint echoes, like ripples of sound trapped beneath glass. She could see them smiling, talking, working, but everything was slowed to a gentle, silent rhythm. Her heart raced, though not from fear. It was wonder that filled her, as though the world had given her a hidden secret, one no one else could see. She took a small step forward, and the sound of her boot pressing into the snow rang out clearly in her ears. The difference startled her. Her footsteps, her breathing, even the rustle of her scarf, all of it belonged to her alone, untouched by the stillness. She walked past a man carrying firewood, the logs stacked high in his arms. His face was calm, but his stride was stretched into an endless step, frozen mid-motion. Sophie tilted her head, staring curiously at the way the snowflakes clung to his hair, refusing to melt. She waved her mitten at him, but he didn't blink, didn't stir. "Is this what the snow does?" she whispered softly, looking upward as more flakes drifted gently down. "Does it slow the world so we can remember how quiet feels?" As she moved through the square, she realized how much beauty she had never noticed before. Icicles shimmered along the edge of a roof like crystal chimes. A lantern glowed faintly in the distance, its light stretching in a golden halo that shimmered against the falling snow. The branches of the bare trees reached into the sky, delicate and perfect, each one cradling a dusting of white like lace. For the first time, Sophie felt the stillness not as loneliness, but as a gift. It was as though the snow had chosen her, letting her step outside of time for a moment, to see the world not as hurried and restless, but as calm and gentle. She pressed her mitten to her chest, where her heart beat fast, and felt a warmth that surprised her. The snow was cold, yet inside her, there was something glowing, something that told her she was safe. The hush seemed to whisper all around her, not with words, but with feeling. "Slow down. Be still. This is the gift you are meant to carry." Sophie closed her eyes for a moment and let that truth settle deep into her, like snow resting softly on the earth. Sophie opened her eyes and took another slow step across the square, her breath steady, her heart still glowing with the warmth of the snow's gift. It was then, through the drifting veil of white, that she noticed someone she hadn't seen before. An old man stood at the edge of the fountain, leaning gently on a wooden cane. His coat was long and heavy, dusted with snow, and a woolen hat covered his silver hair. His face was lined with age, but his eyes, oh, his eyes, were bright, kind, and full of something Sophie could only describe as knowing. Unlike the others, he was not caught in the snow's stillness. He moved freely, slowly, but with ease, his gaze fixed on her as though he had been waiting. Sophie felt no fear. Instead, she felt as though she already knew him, though she was certain she had never seen him before. She walked closer, her boots crunching softly in the snow, until she stood only a few steps away. "You see it, don't you?" the old man said, his voice warm and low, carrying easily through the hush. The world caught in its quiet, wrapped in a blanket of time. Sophie nodded, her mitten tugging nervously at her scarf. "Everyone is moving so slowly. It feels like a dream." The old man smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Not a dream, little one. A gift. The snow does this, every so often, for those who are ready to see. It pauses the noise, the rush, the endless hurry, just long enough for someone to remember how beautiful silence can be. Sophie's eyes widened. And it chose me. He tilted his head thoughtfully. Perhaps you chose it. Not everyone notices the hush. Most see only the cold, the inconvenience, the storm. But you... He leaned closer, his voice lowering like a secret. You listened. You felt the peace hidden inside the falling snow. That is why it opened itself to you. Sophie glanced around at the frozen moment of her village, at the lantern light, the snow resting gently on every surface. The world softened into stillness. Her chest swelled with wonder. Will it stay like this forever? She asked, almost afraid of the answer. The old man shook his head, a soft chuckle rising from him. No, child. Quiet is a gift because it is fleeting. If it lasted forever, we would forget its value. The snow gives you a moment to carry with you, so that when the world grows loud again, you'll know how to find peace within yourself. Sophie's small hand pressed against her scarf, holding his words close. She wanted to remember every syllable, every feeling. Thank you, she whispered. The old man tapped his cane gently against the snow. Don't thank me. Thank the silence. Thank the snow. And when the world is busy and noisy again, remember that the hush you felt today is never truly gone. It lives here now. He placed a hand over his own heart and then nodded at hers. Sophie's eyes shimmered. For the first time, she understood. The snowfall wasn't just covering her village, it was teaching her how to carry stillness within. The snow continued to fall, but it was lighter now, the flakes smaller and drifting more gently through the air. Sophie noticed it first, in the way the lantern light seemed clearer, the way the shapes of the houses in the square sharpened once again. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the stillness began to fade. The villagers stirred, their movements gaining speed, their voices carrying once more through the softened air. The blacksmith's hammer rang faintly in the distance, and a dog barked somewhere down the lane. The pause was ending. Sophie turned back to the old man by the fountain, but her breath caught in surprise. He was gone. The place where he had stood was empty, as though he had never been there at all. Only a single trail of footprints marked the snow, leading away and vanishing into the white haze. She wanted to call after him, to ask his name, but instead, she placed her mitten over her chest, where his words still echoed. The hush you felt today is never truly gone. It lives here now. Her mother's voice rang out again, clearer than before. Sophie, come along, the snow is heavy, you'll catch a chill. Sophie smiled faintly, turning her boots toward home. The world was busy again, but she didn't mind. With each step, she noticed details she might once have missed. The sparkle of snow on a rooftop, the delicate way flakes landed on her sleeves, the hush that lingered between the louder sounds. By the time she reached her home, the windows glowed warmly, golden light spilling across the white snow like a promise of comfort. Her mother stood at the door, waving her inside with a mixture of relief and fondness. Sophie gave one last glance over her shoulder at the village square, where life had already returned to its usual rhythm. Somewhere deep inside her, she felt the stillness settle like a secret she would carry forever. Then she hurried toward the warmth of home, where love and firelight were waiting. The moment Sophie stepped inside, the warmth wrapped around her like a soft blanket. The fire in the hearth crackled cheerfully, casting golden light that danced across the walls. The scent of bread drifted from the kitchen, rich and comforting, and her mother knelt down to brush the snow gently from her coat and scarf. "There you are," her mother said softly, her voice both scolding and relieved. "You stayed out so long, I worried the snow would swallow you up." Sophie leaned into her mother's arms, smiling faintly. "I was just listening," she whispered. Her mother laughed gently, smoothing Sophie's hair. "Listening to the snow, my little dreamer." But she didn't press for more. She simply guided Sophie toward the fire, where her father sat mending a wooden stool and her little brother dozed beneath a wool blanket. Sophie curled into the chair nearest the fire, holding her hands close to the warmth. As the flames flickered and popped, she thought about the square, the stillness, and the old man whose kind eyes seemed to know her heart. She wanted to tell her family everything about how the world had slowed, how silence had a voice, and how the snow had given her something precious. Instead, she said quietly, "The snow makes everything so beautiful. Did you see how soft the roofs looked? Like pillows, all glowing in the light." Her father chuckled, his deep voice calm. "Aye, that's winter for you. It makes us work harder, but it does dress the world in wonder." Her little brother stirred, mumbling sleepily, "Snowflakes sparkle like stars." Sophie's heart swelled, warmed not only by the fire, but by the love gathered here. The hearth and the heart, both glowing. She realized then that quiet moments were not only found beneath an oak tree or in a frozen square, but also here, in the soft hum of her family, in the gentle crackle of fire, in the silence between words spoken with love. She closed her eyes, letting the sounds and warmth of home sink into her. Beyond the walls, snow still fell, steady and calm, tucking the village in for the night. Inside, Sophie carried the hush she had been given, a gift she now understood. For even when the world rushed and roared, she knew she could return to the stillness within her, like a snowflake resting on her mitten, fleeting yet eternal in memory. And as she drifted towards sleep, Sophie smiled, certain that the quiet moments were the most beautiful of all.